All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Because we care for one another's safety, our congregation is gathering online during this long season of coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love. Arise, O souls, arise. Good morning, and welcome to All Souls Online for December 19th, 2021. I'm so pleased to welcome to our pulpit this morning the Reverend Rose Schwab, minister at our neighbor UU Church, Shawnee Mission in Lenexa, Kansas. Rose and I were pleased to discover that we had both been observing a renewed interest in the figures of Mary in the New Testament, especially the mother of Jesus. The interpretation of her role is something of a theological litmus test for a faith tradition's understanding of women's spiritual power and potential as it changes over the centuries. This morning, I will be presenting my reflections at the Shawnee Mission congregation and bringing them greetings from All Souls, while you have the opportunity to hear from Reverend Schwab. Welcome, Rose. We are glad you are here. Welcome all.
Good morning, I'm Reverend Rose. I am the minister at Shawnee Mission Unitarian Universalist Church, your sister church in Johnson County. Today, as we gather to discuss and meditate on the ancient stories, I bring you a call to worship from William Schultz. Come into this place of peace, and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory, and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power, and let its vision change your heart. Come, let us worship. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather to celebrate the glorious mysteries of this great gift.
Now let's join together in speaking once again our covenant promises to this community. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. The tradition of Advent candles teaches us that life itself takes place in the interval between now and whatever we are waiting for, whether that is Christmas or any other hoped-for event. The time of anticipation is really all the time there is. If we choose to, we can make this season of expectation an opportunity for nurturing our faith and love, affirming our hope, for rejoicing, and for deepening our own capacity for peace. The time of waiting grows short. Christmas is almost here. The fourth and final candle of Advent is for peace, and it's also called the angel's candle, in memory of the song that was said to have filled the skies the night that Jesus was born, by choirs of angels proclaiming peace on earth and goodwill to all people. It reminds us that while the season of Christmas is one of generosity and goodwill, good cheer and love and friendship and joy, it also has an element of responsibility and ethical demand. The baby born in the stable was remarkable because of the leader and teacher he would grow up to be. The Prince of Peace, the prophets had called him, the one who would challenge the oppression of empire, the privilege of the religious elite, in the name of the poor, the disabled, the captives, the broken of heart, the broken of body, the broken of life. The peace of Christmas is found wherever justice and compassion stir anew in human community. Whenever people imagine a world without violence and trauma, where all the babies might sleep in heavenly peace, and all the grown-ups too. May the peace that is founded upon right relations and goodwill among people be with us all this season, and help us to build together the new world that we are all waiting to see born. May hope and faith and love and joy and peace all be yours this Christmas Day. Let's join together in our Advent response with the words of Edward Erickson. If, as Herod, we fill our lives with things and again with things, if we consider ourselves so important that we must fill every moment of our lives with action, when will we have the time to make the long, slow journey over the burning desert, as did the Magi, or sit and watch the stars, as did the shepherds, or to brood over the coming of a child, as did Mary? For each one of us, there is a desert to travel, a star to discover, and a being within ourselves to bring to life.
Good morning. I'm Scott England, a member of this church and a member of your Board of Trustees. I'm speaking to you this morning about the offering. Today's offering will go towards the general budget of All Souls. Our church community does a lot for other organizations and causes, and often we share a portion of our offerings with those organizations and causes. But today, the money collected will go towards supporting this organization right here at home. This pandemic has made life difficult in so many ways for all of us. Social distancing as well as social isolation, new and ongoing concerns about health and well-being, loss of jobs and/or income for some, stress, worry, and confusion about mandates, vaccines, regulations, etc. Through all of this, All Souls has been present, providing support, community, and fellowship, though admittedly not in person as much as we would like. Our short return to in-person services this fall showed how much face-to-face, real-time interactions mean to our community. I do want to assure you that the board is carefully considering how and when we can reopen, and our hope is that we will be able to do so as soon as possible and still provide a safe environment for all of our members, including those who have not yet had a chance to become fully vaccinated. We've been relatively fortunate over the past 2 years and benefited from the hard work of staff and the Finance Committee in applying for and receiving Paycheck Protection Program loans that became grants, and in the work of the board and various committees in coming up with ways to reduce and contain costs while still maintaining services as much as possible. We've also had strong continued giving from members through both pledges and other donations. I know most of us pledge funds regularly to All Souls, but our gifts during the year don't provide enough to fully meet our budget. We've always relied on our offerings to provide additional needed income, and that's particularly true in this time of COVID, where we've seen a prolonged loss of rental incomes, which have historically provided a significant portion of our budget. So, consider this morning what All Souls does and has done to enrich and support each of you. Is it the moving and insightful sermons our minister provides, or the highly relevant forum talks? Is it the exceptional experience we give our children through religious education program, at home with resources emailed by Judith and Melanie? Is it the beautiful music that we enjoy each week, whether it's Anthony playing solo, Are section leaders singing a solo or in a duo or small group? Or is it the online classes and Zoom coffee hour? You probably wouldn't be here today if you did not somehow feel enhanced by this community, even when we can't be together in one place. So let's take a few moments for each of us and quietly reflect on how we are enriched by All Souls and how All Souls has helped us over the past 2 years. Today, I'm asking that you consider the value of the inclusion and the support in the spirit that All Souls has given, and celebrate it with a gift. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Let's say together the words of dedication for our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
And now this reading from Thich Nhat Hanh. I like to walk alone on country paths, rice plants and wild grasses on both sides, putting each foot down on the earth in mindfulness, knowing that I walk on the wondrous earth. In such moments, existence is a miraculous and mysterious reality. People usually consider walking on water or in thin air a miracle. But I think the real miracle is not to walk either on water or in thin air, but to walk on earth. Every day we are engaged in a miracle which we don't even recognize. A blue sky, white clouds, green leaves, the black, curious eyes of a child, our own 2 eyes. All is a miracle.
My soul doth magnify the Lord, said Mary, under circumstances which make it something of a startling utterance. Not I will accept the will of the Lord, not I will bow before the Lord, not even I give thanks to the Lord. No, Mary, this young woman, presumably unfamiliar with angels or divine voices of any kind, let alone those pronouncing that salvation would grow inside her ordinary flesh. This woman, who may be innocent but hardly seems naive, says something remarkable. My soul magnifies the Lord. Who I am, what I do, how I choose makes God bigger. As if God were to slip between microscope slides and appear in never-before-seen detail, which is, of course, exactly what happens. Somehow, in being magnified, God gets small enough to sleep amongst the straw and the scent of the farm animals. God becomes magnified. God becomes particular, tangible, urgent as a hungry child. And Mary, like so many women before and after, puts the baby to her breast, where they both grow vast in one another's eyes.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud.
Searching is one of our core Unitarian Universalist beliefs. We all come here because we seek to experience the holy, because we hope that when we come to church, we will leave having found an embodiment, a sense of connectivity, of longevity, or peacefulness. We get to search because we are part of a living tradition, and we believe that it is within each moment, each crossing of time and space, that new understandings of the divine can emerge. That each time we gather, there is a conversation that could only be had with the very people who are in this very room at this very moment. That each person is privileged to their own truth. That each of us has the power to interpret ancient stories. Each of us has holy glasses that we can put on our own two eyes, the lens through which our world is searched in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. How beautiful is Unitarian Universalism? And how important it is that we exist in the tapestry that is religion in the world today. Because we, as a people, have played a very important role in the religious and social discourse over the centuries. Now, recently I was chatting with my neighbor about church history, bless her heart, because that's what it means to have me as a neighbor. As I was enlightening her to some of the more fascinating junctures of Unitarian Universalist history, she stopped and exclaimed, "Wait, your religion is an actual religion?" I was like, what do you think I do? Yes, it's an actual religion rooted in actual beliefs that have actually had a dramatic effect on the world that you and I live in. Public education, reason, healthcare, democracy, gender equality, these are social movements that have been led by Unitarian Universalists, haltingly and not without our own issues. But as long as we're on the topic of church history, and I've got your attention, I want to take us on a backwards journey through time, working our way back to the early Christian women that I was tasked with writing about today, and examine the ways that their ministries are actually alive and well today. Our first stop on our journey backwards is 600 years ago. We are going to remember the birth of Unitarianism and Universalism in Europe. Now, up until that point, everyone was Catholic, and society was, as many of you were as well, I'm sure, and society was organized as the Catholics wanted it until the printing press was invented, and then people could search these texts that were being used to organize society and create laws. This sparked the Protestant Reformation, and amongst all of these Protestants, we, Unitarians and Universalists, were the far left Protestants, protesting the Trinity, the vengeful God, and dogma, and promoting science, reason, social equality, and religious pluralism. For when we searched the texts, what we saw was, like our Jewish and Muslim cousins, that there was no Trinity, and thus we became Unitarians. But more than this, when we read the Bible, we found that God themselves was not only a source of enduring goodness in the people's lives, but that God's character was an ever-evolving being itself. That an openness is a central facet to the divine, that the divine's own character is not sealed, that in each juncture of time and space in these great myths, the sacred is moving and growing alongside of us, because of us, following us, searching with us. And thus our Unitarian Universalist faith could be measured by the extent to which we are able to remain open to the ever-unfolding possibilities of spiritual and relational growth. It is our persistence to remain open in the difficulties of the search that marks our faith. For it is the searching that keeps us fresh. It is the searching that keeps us alive. It is the searching that keeps us healthy. Now, what is it that keeps us fresh? What is it that keeps us alive? What is it that keeps us healthy? For centuries and even millennia, people have been searching these very specific texts of the great books. And beyond that, people have been searching for the texts that were left out of this great text, frustrated with the process that decided what would become canon or get to be part of the Bible. Because what the Roman Catholic Church chose to canonize is really a reflection of their own agenda and power structure of the Roman Empire. It's ironic, really, because the ministry of Jesus was anti-empirical, so it's frustrating that the power structures of Roman society were preserved passively simply by whose voices were preserved. For most of the writings that were included, and therefore preserved, were the writings of male persons, except for maybe the Song of Solomon, which I'm pretty sure was written by a woman. And thus it seems at first glance that most of the leadership in the early Christian movement were male persons, and that women were only allowed to hover nearby because of Jesus' generous elevation of them out of their lowly status. But if we search even just a little bit into the history of Judaism, we find that it was actually around the time of Jesus that Judaism switched from a patrilineal to a matrilineal society. That the women who surrounded Jesus were in fact very empowered in their world, that they could hold property, that names and ethnicity followed the mother's line, and in fact that the financiers of the early Christian movement were the women who made sure that the lights stayed on, so to speak. So we have to wonder, were their voices just incongruent enough with the Roman social structure that they were discarded and destroyed? And in what ways have these losses impaired us as a society today? What fragility in the canonization process have led us to this point in our world where we all are continuing to struggle with a disturbing social structure? How was the original story and meaning and theology watered down or shifted away from a radical empowerment of marginalized voices? And who were these women? And what did they think? Well, it has been found that in the early Christian communities, women and people of the lowest caste were often leaders in the churches, called mothers of the synagogue, or simply the more gender-neutral elder. Almost all of the house churches named in the New Testament are identified by the names of the women who apparently led them: Chloe, Nympha, Apphia, Priscilla, Lydia, Mary, the mother of Mark. But despite these early examples of strong female leadership in the early Christian movement, somehow we end up with witches being burned on religious grounds, and then 2,100 years of male-only priesthood in the Catholic Church. We've got portraits of Mary from the 3rd century that depict her staring right into the beholder's eyes, strong and confident. And then we get to the 9th century, where she has downcast eyes and a demure posture. And then in the 1960s, with Vatican II, they decreed that statues of Mary must be smaller than statues of Jesus. Wah, wah. But let's talk about these Marys. For both the Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene were powerful members of Jesus' family, whose embodied and mystical presence in life was both mystical and were the first-hand account of his life. They show that women were indeed central influences on the religion, and in the early writings, it shows that they were even depicted as more intimately tied to God and are the central characters of the epic themselves. For example, let's start with Mother Mary. In the ancient texts, it has been noted that there is a parallel between the stories of Mary, Mother of Jesus, and Abraham. Both received a divine annunciation regarding their miraculously conceived firstborn son. Jesus carried the wood of his own sacrifice on his back up the mountain, just like Isaac did. Mary stood on top of Golgotha at her son's sacrifice, just as Abraham stood on top of Mount Moriah, which could mean that the gospel authors saw Mary as the new Abraham. And after all, let us remember that Jesus was not the first person in his family who was immaculately conceived. Mary's own mother, Anna, the grandmother of Jesus, also had a virgin birth, making Mary perhaps the child of God herself? Question mark? This has all somehow been just looked over. And as for Mary Magdalene, nowhere does it say that Mary Magdalene was a sex worker. This is a bizarre shaming of her that began in the year 600 in order to demote her role, and boy, are we still dealing with the loss of her voice from this story. Because it turns out that her role was actually quite a big one, and her interpretation of the ministry profound. Because did you know that there is a gospel of Mary? It was written at the same time as the other gospels, the earliest writings, alongside the Gospel of John. After all, in this great myth, she was the first person to witness Jesus ascend, was his closest confidant, and, like the wife of Muhammad, Khadijah, probably financed some of the operation. But perhaps all the copies of her gospel were destroyed because this gospel was lost to society until 1868, when someone was at an antique mall and happened to buy it. A 5th century papyrus codex written in Coptic that is missing pages and yet offers us an incredible perspective on the early ministry and theology. But then, after it was found, it still wasn't published for public consumption for 100 years until the 1980s. And now, before I read part of it to you, I want to just pause here because what I found in this text was shocking to me. I've wished for many years to find an interpretation of the Christian scriptures that reflect what I grew up with as a Unitarian Universalist. It is written as a dialogue, back and forth, with the apostles questioning Mary Magdalene on what Jesus told her. So they first ask, "Tell us about matter. Will it survive or not?" Mary recounts that Jesus said, "All of nature with its forms and creatures exist together and are interwoven with each other," which sounds a lot like the interdependent web of all life. Next, the apostles ask, "What is the sin of this world?" Mary recounts that Jesus said, "Sin does not exist. You only bring it into manifestation when you act in ways that are against nature. It is for this reason that the good has come among you, pursuing its own essence within nature in order to reunite everything to its origin." And that sounds a lot like Universalism. Then, Mary, throughout the text, refers to Jesus as the Son of Humanity, which implies that Jesus was human, which is the fundamental theology of Unitarianism and humanism. And then if that's not enough, as another poet puts it, Mary Magdalene confesses that you must realize that earth unfolds its powers and properties in union. There is one heart, one being, one will, one God, all in all. Finally, Mary goes on to say that the goal, spiritually, is to find contentment at the level of the heart. And if you are discouraged, take heart in the presence of the image of your own true nature. And that sounds a lot like each person being privileged to their own truth. So is my religion a real religion? Mary Magdalene, early Christian minister, seems to think so. Universalists also were the first white Protestant denomination to ordain a woman. So perhaps these messages of equality and empowerment amongst all people have stayed alive despite it all. After all, here I am, preaching a very similar message. For Jesus was out here equalizing people, deeply engaged, loving women, listening to women, taking our personhood and thoughts seriously, raising up our voices. So in my research for this sermon on women in early Christianity, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that Christianity itself hinges on the idea that women in leadership are indeed necessary for a full interpretation of Revelation. And that these early leaders of the movement were doing what we women are doing now, which is being theologians and leaders. Because here we have a gospel written out of the canon, perhaps destroyed, that reflects a truth that has persisted throughout the ages. That there is a great oneness, that dogma helps no one, that humanity itself is hugely powerful when it comes to creating the beloved community, that each time we gather, there is a conversation that could only be had with the very people who are in this very room at this very moment. And at this juncture in human history, when we are called to find a new way in order to move forward together as a globe, the room is indeed a very big one. With people of every caste and class and race and gender being necessary for us to fully discern what is holy. For within each moment, each crossing of time and space, new understandings of the divine emerge. But without the fullness of the story, without the fullness of our voices, our holiness cannot be full. So let us stay searching. Let us stay open to one another, to finding understanding, to remember that it's not they who walk on water that perform miracles, but it is they who walk on earth in right relationship, living past the reflections of society. We must break these apart and realize that indeed This week, I invite you to search, to keep on searching, finding in each moment a place to look deeper. Today, our benediction comes from Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Go in peace and blessed be.
Many thanks to my friend and colleague, Reverend Rose, for that fascinating glimpse into the Marys of legend. And thanks to you for joining us this morning. We invite you to gather now for informal conversation and fellowship at our Community Connection Zoom room. The link can be found on the All Souls website homepage or here in the chat. Next Sunday, we will recall a golden oldie from years past with the candles of Kwanzaa and reflections on covenant and community. If you celebrate the solstice, you might like to join the members of Proclaiming Pride KC for an outdoor ritual and celebration here at All Souls this evening, starting at 5:30. We also hope that you will make us part of your Christmas Eve this Friday in one of several ways. First, if you are out and about anytime after 10 in the morning, drop by church and pick up your hot chocolate Yulebach goodie bag sponsored by the Board of Trustees. Be sure to reserve these for yourself and family members online today. Second, come for a brief outdoor sunset storytelling, candle lighting, and singing here at 5 o'clock. You can gather by the fire pits on the patio or watch snugly from your car while listening to the sound on the radio. You can also pick up your board Yulebach bag at that time. Or if you are not planning to go out, join us online at 8 o'clock to see highlights of the patio event, along with other music and a Christmas meditation. We wish everyone a very loving and merry holiday and a happy and healthy new year to come. Christmas blessings to all.